Well, today is actually one of the most exciting days in my career because I get to sit here and interview none other than a true superstar in so many aspects. Roxana Mehran, welcome.
Thank you, Eva. Lovely to be here. And
So wonderful
I'm
to
so
have
impressed
you here.
with the surroundings here. I want to move here and work here. This is one of the
Come,
best work environments I've seen.
well,
So much light.
work environments are absolutely
So
critical,
important.
and I think we're going to cover lots of topics today.
Right, yes.
Because one of my roles here really is to increase the engagement of females in clinical research. And that's a huge topic. And you are an absolute pioneer and outstanding person in that field. So you did tell me we could get up close and personal.
Yeah.
Nothing was off limits. Let's test that.
Yes. So absolutely. First of all, it's great. It's such an important topic now, more than ever before. Women have been underrepresented in our clinical trials. We know that. We have lots of data on white men. We could stop studying them, seriously. And we have so little data on women. And everyone thinks, well, how can we fix that? And when you think about it, is that there is such an important gender concordance in terms of enrollment of a diverse patient population with diverse leadership in your clinical study. So imagine that you go to a woman, and you are a woman, and you are talking to her about the fact that about a clinical study, and that it requires you to come in a few times for the follow-ups, and it requires you to be open. And when you try to enroll a woman, as opposed to a man, we know that they're much more inquisitive because they're the ones who are taking care of everyone, except themselves, of course, but everyone. So they know everything. They've searched the literature, they know everything. So the person, whoever it is, has to have the patience for all of those questions and answers, has to have empathy, has to also look like the patient in some ways, so that that patient gains the trust in the system that has often excluded them. And so we absolutely need women in leadership positions of clinical studies and clinical trials as principal investigators. And I have some tales to tell you because it is all changing. Today, just before coming here, in between, right on the train, when I was lost on the train, all of those things. But I was on an executive committee call of a very, very large randomized trial that I can speak about publicly because it has now been announced. It's called the Artemis trial. We will be looking at an IL-6 inhibitor, ziltivekimab, in acute myocardial infarction patients. And Novo Nordisk is the sponsor. And they are now not only been given the guidance for diverse patient population, but the mandate from the regulatory bodies that they want to see a diversity plan. And as the principal investigator, who also included 50-50, the executive committee for women and diverse women also to populate the executive committee. They've never had a larger executive committee, 13 people on that executive committee, so that we could serve all the leadership physicians who are physician scientists. But most importantly, they have now said that every single site will have a male and a female PI. What does this mean? We have to train up women in clinical trial. You cannot just get in because you're a woman. You also have to have the fortitude, the passion, the idea of wanting to learn about clinical trial methodologies and research methodologies to then be involved. But if you are, there is no better time than now. Everyone is looking for women leaders in clinical trials because now it's a mandate. When there's a carrot and a stick, everyone is following, right? And so it's going to be a great, great way forward.
I'm happy to hear that. I did a consulting for a a more junior person who came with a clinical trial, and he was putting in a grant, and the first thing I did was look at all the PIs, and
All
I
the same
said,
guys.
I'm not that familiar with Swiss name, but tell me these aren't all 13 men.
And they were.
They were. He didn't realise it. It's this unconscious bias. It wasn't deliberate. He explained to me, these are all the people who write the guidelines. Funny about that, they write the guidelines, they become famous, and then they lead the trials.
It's a really great boys' club. Once you're in, you don't get out. And it's a little bit worse in Europe, I would say, because there's a finite amount of time for Europeans and UK physicians to have that powerful position, right? It takes so long to become a professor, and then you have to retire at a certain age. In the United States, you could become a professor at the age of 35, and you can die as a professor and still continue to practice. So we don't have an upper age limit. We probably should, but we don't. But the fact of the matter is that it's even more of a hierarchy here in Europe than it is elsewhere. So we really have to get to it head on and absolutely, absolutely go after it. And I think that it's happening. But let me just tell you, I've been in clinical trial business, and it's going to get raw a little bit. So let's
Fantastic.
get ready.
Get ready.
Get ready for this New Yorker to say it all. 28 years in completely devoting my entire life to research. Mm-hmm. I was the first female interventional fellow at Mount Sinai Hospital. Mm-hmm. At the time, I think there were 3 women, Cindy Grimes, Alice Jacobs, Bonnie Weiner, who were practicing interventional cardiology in the United States and were known for it. Probably there were many more women, but nobody knew about them. And I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm the only, how's this going to work out? I was totally full of energy, wanted to dive in and get in there. But it's like you look out here with these beautiful Swiss mountains. There were huge, huge rocks in the road. I mean, the climb was steep. Mm-hmm. There were no roads. Steep climb. And falling off every time you climbed up. I remember 9 months pregnant, sleeping under my desk for many, many nights to get papers out to publish. Otherwise, I would perish or not be included in I remember always showing up to the table for a piece of pie and never getting anything but some crumbs, sometimes nothing. I remember the very difficult, culture of interventional cardiology. It was a new, interventional cardiology is about 40 years old. So I've been doing this for 20. So it was just like 12 years old. It was a baby. And everybody wanted to do all these new things, and all the men loved it. And it was like a very male-dominated subspecialty. And it is to this day. It's a male-dominated subspecialty because you make the most money. It's the most gratifying. You get the results. And boy, do they think you're a huge hero because you're going inside the heart. You're using instruments. You're not cracking the chest open. You are a hero for the patients, for the families, for the hospital. You're a big money maker. It is a very, very highly sought after subspecialty. So imagine a woman there, where even our nurses and the nurses, talk to me like, well, I should be one of them, unconscious bias or non-bias or whatever. And for years and years, and in clinical trials and working, giving up everything. And if you look in interventional cardiology now, many of these women are either not married, do not have children, or they're in their second or third marriages. And those who are with children, grown children, feel absolutely deflated, exhausted from fighting all the time to get to where they want to be. Because underneath it all, there is sexual harassment, there is discrimination, there is misogyny, there is very, very poor language spoken. And, you think that in 2023, it's all taken care of, but it isn't. So just last week, literally on Sunday, I was just to talk about how it works with unconscious bias or whatever. You just spoke about it. This happened to me, and I want to tell the audience about this. So I was in the most exclusive club of very few invited, the who's who in cardiovascular clinical trials at the CVCT workshop in Washington, D.C. We get to go there, and your gloves come off, and you say whatever you want about clinical trial methodology, even if it was done by the best person at Harvard or wherever. We say, oh, they tried to game the system. We say whatever we want. A top-notch statistician was giving a speech. It was like her time to talk. Her slides didn't come up, and she began to feel like very uncomfortable. She's older. Everyone knows her. But the audience is so high end that you are feeling like you want to be at your best, right, when you're up there. And I saw that she was like trying to, because it's hard, her slides are always so good. She's such a great speaker. I was so upset. I really wanted to see her slides. So I said, Janet, I'll figure it out. So it was such a small room. So I went in the back and I talked to the slide person. I'm trying to look, and she had made a mistake and she made the mistake. So anyway, be that as it may, we weren't able to fix the slides. She spoke off the cuff. Everything went well. And then there was a break. So we go all to go and get our coffees during the break. And when I'm standing there in the coffee thing, and the woman I was helping to figure out the slides comes up to me and says, since you're her assistant, can you tell her that it really wasn't my fault? Because, you're her assistant. And I was...
Can I ask you a question? How many assistants have an H index of 177, Roxana? You should actually take that. You are one of the...
Oh, well, thank you.
The most accomplished women.
I guess what I'm saying about
cardiologist.
That... Oh, you're so sweet, Eva. But what I'm saying here is for women to, I could have been like, I'm going to rip you up. How dare you, right? Because of all these things you're telling me. And I just said to her, no, I'm not her assistant, but I understand why you might think that. But you know what? Not every woman who's helpful, who has empathy, I was the only woman I was the only woman in that room. It was me and another woman. And she was on the panel, so she couldn't get up to help. But I was the only woman in the audience who got up to help this woman, because I saw that it was uncomfortable. If it was a man, I would have done the same, because I wanted to just help. That's what we do. That is part of our fabric, our DNA. We're empathetic. That's why we make the best leaders. That's why we should be in leading positions. And for years and decades and centuries, leadership has not been chosen on competence. It's about confidence. And it's about other things, and women have amazing qualities for leadership positions. So what I'm here to tell you, after 28 years, after giving my entire life to this, I think we have done some removal of the big rocks. I think there is a path. It's a steep one still. The window dressing looks good. It's a window dressing. So every society will say, look at our 40% women, no more males, everything is fixed. And look, it's all fixed. This panel is full of women. We fixed the diversity issue. And I will say, you haven't fixed a thing. You should see what we're all going through. And maybe the big rocks, maybe there is a way. But if you've ever climbed, we talked about climbing just before this, and you get gravel in your shoes, you can't go very far. You start climbing, and it's like there. You just can't do it. So you take your shoes off, you empty the gravel, you put it back on, and you start to go up with a great feeling, except it fills up again. And that is a path of a woman at the moment. And what I want to say to all of the women who are listening, do not give up. Do not give up. Listen to your heart. Keep your eye on the ball and based on what you really love to do, and move on. And you shouldn't have to get used to the gravel. Because many of us say we adapt. We adapt to being treated poorly. And that adaptation needs to go away, because they need to adapt to have us there at the table, because the world is changing, and the corporate world already knows that if you have a diverse board, the company does better. You're hearing from very, very different. If we have a diverse leadership in our clinical trials, the trial will do better. Implementation science will be that much more effective. But at the moment, the window dressing looks good. The depth and the breadth of it needs a lot of work.
A lot of work. I was at a dinner with some remarkable women just the other night, and one of them, who's a renowned oncologist, said that the daughter had at kindergarten a dress-up day. So she put her in surgical scrubs with a stethoscope. The kindergarten is in the hospital. It's the hospital kindergarten. And the child walked in and they said, "Oh, she's a wonderful nurse."
Of course.
And not one person in the day suggested that she might be dressed as a doctor. Mm-hmm. So it's for me, it's this ingrained bias. We did a study looking in our national trials group in Australia for cancer trials, for GI, so not breast cancer, a lot of women there, but gastrointestinal. And there was 2 women who did, there was no woman PI until 2005, and then there were 2 women, one of which was me, recurrently doing trials. I mean, and no one believed the data, but people were upset to see the data. So my question to you, Roxana, is why don't people just embrace it? The data's there. Why do they start feeling defensive? Why is there always got to be some explanation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because we haven't been intentional about it. And now we're trying to be intentional. And the powers that be, which are usually men, and I love men. Please don't get me wrong. I love men. I do not have a man-hating relationship at all. It's not their fault. It's just the way it sort of has worked. But I believe wholeheartedly that they're not also comfortable. They're feeling that maybe the bar is now lower. I worked so hard to get here. Why should this person get in so much better? But isn't that the way of life, that you should make it? For me, I want to make it easier.
Yeah.
I want to make it easy. I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through. I don't want anyone. My worst enemy.
Have you been called a cunt?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In public?
I have a story. So when I first started in my interventional world, I was with a fantastic group in Washington, D.C. I got an offer in New York. And my family was in New York. My love of my life was in New York, and we were very, very, almost getting married, but not yet. So I was like, this is perfect. I'll just go there. He's training there. We'll stay there. It'll be perfect. So I go on my interview, and it's this very, high volume hospital for interventions. and this older man with the white hair sitting there. And I know his son was in the same practice. And he like started to talk to me, and he went like this. He goes, got up out of his chair and he goes, to look at my belly. You're not pregnant, are you? Because you're coming in here, can't have you being pregnant. And I said, oh my God, how dare he? And I didn't know how to, because it's illegal to do that in America. But of course, at that time, he had so much power in interventional cardiology, so much of it that there would be no way that he'd be fired because he was a high-level person. And so I had to just swallow that and say, well, I see that my answer to that was, I see you have lots of children behind you. That is a very, very personal statement for me. I'm not going to answer that. But you know what you have there with your family and your children? That is exactly what I'm striving for. Family and children, yes, if that's what you're asking for at some point. But I'm not going to answer your question. So this led to me getting a contract, and we were, I was about to go, except one of my friends who was working there said, I just saw the head of the department, and he asked me, when's the beaver getting here? I was the first woman they were ever hiring, ever, in their cath lab. And I didn't even know what is the beaver, what is the meaning of a beaver? And then so I said to him, what does that really mean? I'm Iranian, English is not my first language. I don't use these disgusting words for women. So the C word is so gross, I won't even say it. Beaver, like, what is that? And when he told me that, I hung up the phone, I took the contract and I ripped it. I said, I'm never going to that place after those two incidences. So you never have to. There are always going to be great other choices for you. When there is misogyny, when you are feeling those horrific things that should never be said, walk away from it and don't go to those places. There'll be many choices. That we can say now. We couldn't say it for me then. And I literally went through it, and I suffered because I got paid less. Then we got married and we lived apart. I mean, it was very difficult to do that. And you have to have a really good spouse and a good partner, because that's the key for everything. And there has to be shared responsibilities and things like that. We have three daughters. But to be honest, that experience really clouded my every single cell of my in thinking about, is this how they think of us?
Well, I think every woman would have a story like that. I mean, I was told when I got pregnant, because I was at a hospital, don't go on campus so they don't see that you're pregnant. So don't go for 9 months. It was before we did lots of video conferencing, and just go back when you're not pregnant anymore. I mean, it's extraordinary. And yet women, I think, after they have children, are the most stable workforce. They're not off to the next job or the next.
No. I have never, I've had, literally throughout my career, I've had 2 jobs. It's 28 years. So I went to work with Marty Leon, who was amazing mentor and really helped me. And now I'm with Valentin Puster and Samin Sharma. So that's been my 2 places. Of course, with the first, because he moved, I moved with him because it was our team. But at the end of the day, it was that kind of.
They might need you.
Yeah, I know, really.
No,
exactly.
We're
Emergency.
all good.
Yeah, no, we're all good. So, women don't jump from a branch to another. Women love stability, and they like to build things, and they want to, pay it forward, which I think is yet another very important aspect of leadership.